Yeah, so on Wednesday nights, depends on who's running race committee and whatnot, but generally the rabbit is supposed to round a mark and then sail for a certain amount of time or a certain distance, maybe 30 seconds past one of the markers. But the point is that the race committee doesn't drive forever. And the reason for that is that at some point there's a ley line and you want to have a race course that is bigger than just, 30 seconds on port and 4 minutes on starboard. So when you're stacking up, waiting for the motorboat to come, just be aware that when the motorboat stops, you could be in trouble because the motorboat is technically a start mark. You're not allowed room at the motorboat. It's just like at a standard start line. You're not allowed to come in here and ask for room at the mark. So boat 2 has to wait until boat 1 and boat 3 and all the other boats start before they can go in. They cannot cram in there. So again, just like there's risk with starting too far at one end on a normal start line, on a rabbit start, you have to be careful that you don't get stuck waiting for the motorboat when the motorboat stops. So it's more conservative to try to start, these boats are too big, to try to start a little bit further up, down. And unless there's a really, really strong advantage on the left, this also gives you a bigger race course. So, especially on our body of water, there are a lot of shifts, obviously. So, if your race, maybe I will draw that back again. If your race course is race course number 1, you can only take advantage, so the wind shifts left, you can take advantage of that for this long. So you're sailing at this angle instead of that angle. Let's say you sailed to here with the normal wind, then the wind shifted, and now you get to sail a more efficient angle, and actually you have to sail past the ley line if it doesn't shift back. But let's say you're lucky and it shifts back just as as you get to the ley line. So you've gotten this much sailing on a lifted tack. Now, once you're on the ley line, if you get another lift, that doesn't really help you very much. You can sail a little bit faster straight to the mark, but you don't get the extra advantage. If you get a header or a knock, motvri, you lose. So essentially, once you're on the ley line, you lose if you have a lift, because everyone else gains more than you do. And you lose if you get a header, because now you're gonna have to tack again. So you don't wanna be on the ley line too early. So winding back to what I was talking about, this is course number 1. Course number 2 is the whole thing. So if you start here, you now have a wider course, more time to sail on port tack. So when you get this, I'll just take these labels off. When you get, so now I'll put you on the same ladder rung because you have the same nice rabbit start. Boat 2 as boat 1. So when you get this knock, this header, you also tack on it. So you get the same here, the same course as this boat. Then it comes back and you sail this way. Now my hand sanitizer's wrecked the pen. There we go. So these boats are still even. And now, let's say you get a right-hand shift. This boat continues to sail straight. This boat actually gets to capitalize on that and is now a little bit ahead. Now do a little double tack and gets in at the mark. So just if you sail on a wider course, a more square course, there are more options to tack on shifts, which is very important in a shifty, small body of water venue like we have here. So all that came back to a little extra incentive not to crowd out the final point of the possible rabbit start. Now let's talk about the other extreme. So let's say the left side of the course is very favored, and I think I should just get rid of all that. So now you're fighting to be the first boat to duck the rabbit. As soon as the motorboat comes past here, this is a motorboat following the laser. So you want to be this boat. The risk of starting here, starting very close here, is that you're not 100% confident whether this boat is gonna round and head in that direction, or round and head in that direction, or go in the normal direction. So if you're set up here and you suddenly notice that the motorboat is driving straight towards you, instead of maybe you're anticipating that it was gonna come like that, now you have to bear off and get in front of the motorboat, which is difficult enough if there's no one else there. But if there was some reason that you knew that there is an advantage over here, probably other people know that too. And if they're set up over here, once again, you've got this situation where you're not allowed to call for room to duck the motorboat. So this boat, if there's a bunch of other boats here, this boat is basically in trouble. There's not a lot they can do. You can try to get down into that hole, but you're probably gonna foul this boat. So this is a very dangerous place to be if the wind ends up being further to the right than you anticipated. So then you think, okay, well, I don't wanna be that boat, so maybe I should be this boat, which seemed to be the smart boat. But then if you're unlucky, again, so you're anticipating the wind to come this way, but the motorboat actually goes over here. So now this boat is happy because they meet just as the motorboat goes past, they duck and they're happy. This boat is not happy because by the time they get there, the motorboat is already here. So this boat is now started that far behind. You may think, oh, well, that's a lot better than that last situation where you basically got shut out and you had no options. But the whole point of starting at the favored end was to give you a very small advantage. So to try to visualize this, if we had a really nice rabbit start and it was right-hand favored, again, everyone's sailing across the race course, and this boat is this far ahead. So boat A is this far ahead. If the left-hand side is favored and everything else is even, this boat is that far ahead. It may be a bit more because the boats might start falling into each other because they're being lee bowed. But essentially, you're only dealing with a maximum of this much gain. And if you're halfway down the line, it's only half of that gain. So if you go over here, you're risking starting behind everyone for the potential gain of, you know, only a few boat lengths. So it's better in my mind, even if the left is favored, to just allow yourself a little more space so when you see the motorboat driving towards you, you have time to reset. Or if you see the motorboat driving up that way, you can accelerate earlier. So it's better to have a really nice rabbit start than to gain the potential tiny little advantage from being further towards the favored side. I just want to do a little clarification here because it's not obvious how you would end up with a rabbit start that favors this boat, or a rabbit start that favors this boat here. In this case, the rabbit would have to be going progressively slower and slower. In this case, the rabbit would have to be getting faster and faster, which is definitely possible if the wind's changing, but maybe not that common. The way that I was envisioning this happening is that originally, so you've got your windward mark, your leeward marks, and when the rabbit start happened, well, that's maybe a bit too exaggerated. When the rabbit start happened, the wind was coming from that side. And so we had a nice square, let's see, square to this. Nice square rabbit start. This is probably going to be too exaggerated. You'll get the picture. So we had a nice square rabbit start. Nobody is behind anyone else. I guess maybe this boat was a bit slow rounding the rabbit. And then the wind shifts back. And now everyone has to bear off and sail forward. And that's too exaggerated, but essentially everyone has to bear off when the wind comes back to neutral. So that's one way that you could end up with this boat being this far ahead. And then the same in this case. So if the wind was coming from a left phase during the rabbit start, everyone ends up with a fair start relative to the left wind. And then if it goes back to median, to your square wind direction, the wind direction that the race committee planned for, everyone heads up, and this guy is unhappy. These are boats, these little lines, just really zoomed out. So this boat comes out ahead. So maybe I could also throw in a little extra tactical note that if you think it's oscillating fairly back and forth, and if you think the course is set up properly, which is a big if, but if you think that's the case, then in a right shift, you might actually want to be further to the left so that when the wind goes back left, you come out ahead. Opposite situation, if the wind is in a left shift and you're confident that it's coming back to center, or you think it's going right next because you've been out on the water an hour before the start and you've seen this pattern over and over again, maybe it's even in the forecast that the wind's going to go right, and now it's been flipping around and it just goes left, and then the rabbit comes. It could be worth starting to the right rabbit passes, wind comes right, now you're this far ahead. Anyway, so rabbit starts are sort of designed to prevent this because you start out with essentially a fair start on a diagonal course. You start off with a fair start relative to the wind. So I just wanted to clarify that because it wasn't obvious how this advantage so was gotten. If you have a very nice rabbit start, then you end up being, I'll just try to draw, let's say this is a perfectly even rabbit start otherwise. So everyone is on a line square to the course. You have a good rabbit start. I'll talk about what that means in a second. But here, you start lee-bowing this boat, so this boat starts falling into you. And unless this boat's very stubborn, this boat will yell, you know, you can tack if you want to. I'm not pinning you. If you tack, I'll duck you. Because this boat is getting sucked down. So let's give them names. A is getting sucked down into B because of the lee bow effect, if they're close enough. Sometimes this is just a psychological effect, but if they're close enough, it's actually an aerodynamic effect of getting sucked down into it. So you can tack, go ahead, especially if A sees B looking over their shoulder. A good move for A is to say, go, 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 tack, tack. Actually, don't say go, because that sounds like no. You'd probably say it in Swedish anyway. So if B tacks away, even if A needs to duck B, A is now in a better position. So all these boats have moved forward a little in time. So B sails over here, but now A has a nice lane, a nice buffer to leeward of them. So all that to say, if you get a nice rabbit start, this boat wants you to tack, so you're free to tack if you want to, and this boat is nowhere near being able to pinch you out. You're more likely to roll, to come over top of that boat. So this boat, B, has all the options just from being a little bit ahead on the rabbit start. So better to get a nice effective rabbit start than to be the boat with the very most advantage, because the boat with the very best advantage took a bigger risk at the beginning. So how do you get this extra little boost off the rabbit start? It's by thinking of the motorboat as a buoy, because it is a start mark. So first maybe, whew, the waves are getting loud. First maybe let's think about a gate mark. Your tactical rounding is to sail down below the mark, head up, and pass the mark at close hauled, full speed. So here the boat is heeling over, here the boat is flat, so that you get this heeling over and flattening and accelerating around the corner here. So now if you had current, again, use our fancy blue arrow. Now this is tricky. So if the current is going that way, it feels like the mark is moving that way. So let's go here. So yeah. So if you have current going this way, then it actually feels like the mark is going from 1 to 2. So if you imagine, as this boat is sailing down, they're being carried down with the current. Anyway, so they have to visualize this mark as being here. I might have got something backwards there. I'll have to look at the video. But basically, if the mark is coming towards you, don't aim for here, or else you'll end up giving up this space. You need to aim for where the mark will be, where you will be. So maybe that was a complicated way, but the analogy is that this is actually a motorboat. So a rabbit start is like a mark with a lot of current. The mark is coming towards you, so you need to anticipate that hopefully you're not coming from here, you're coming from maybe here. You can bear off a little bit well before the motorboat comes, heel the boat to leeward, and head up and already be on close hauled. So I like to aim for here on the motorboat because the motorboat is moving away, and by the time you get to here, the motorboat's moved out of your way. So you want to be flat boat, close hauled, full speed as you pass the motorboat, because the alternative, maybe we'll use this as the alternative, is this. So change colors here, maybe. In this case, maybe you have a little bit of speed, maybe you don't have a little bit of extra speed, maybe everyone did it well, but you get a nice gap to leeward. In this case, you've wasted your gap to leeward. So if you can already be on close hauled when you pass the motorboat, you then have this good amount of spot distance to leeward. In heavy wind, you can foot off. In light wind, you can foot off. In medium wind, it's not quite as important to have this spot, but it doesn't hurt. If this boat's trying to roll you, you can go down with them a little bit and then maybe try to go faster than them and head them up. But it gives you a lot of options to have this gap to leeward here. If you are on half wind when you pass the motorboat, even if you're going really fast, it takes a while to head up and you waste that precious spot here. So now let's say some motorboat waves come, which never happens. That would never happen. So the ferry drives by and there's motorboat waves, and this boat, maybe they're lucky, maybe they're skilled, but boat number one does a little better job of navigating these waves, or the waves weren't as bad where they were. And now suddenly boat number two is basically out of luck. If the left-hand side of the course was favored, this is a really big problem for two. They basically lost their chance to be competitive at the top of the fleet. So try to visualize the motorboat as a moving mark and try to do a tactical rounding where you enter wide and exit close. Again, that doesn't have to be coming from here. In fact, it shouldn't be coming from here because this boat will say, hey, up, 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 watch out, you don't have any rights. But if you can duck early and then come up and already be on close hauled when you pass the back corner of the motorboat, that's when you get this nice space to leeward. Or maybe if you're going faster than the other boats, you're also ahead. Any thoughts, comments, questions?